Welcome to Roundup Reddit. We dive into real experiences and bring you the voices of those who've lived through incredible challenges. Story 1. My mom supports my brother by bullying me. My parents are divorced, and I live with each other half the time. My dad is fair with my brother and I. My mom vastly prefers my brother, and while she claims she doesn't, it's quite obvious. He never gets in trouble for anything and always gets what he wants. Well, at a 4th of July BBQ, long story short, my brother got obnoxiously rude and insulting to me in front of a mutual friend while our parents were in a different room. He kept asking me to leave, and so eventually I did, but to my dad's house rather than my mom's house. My mom and I had a discussion, and after about an hour, she finally agreed to punish my brother. She hasn't punished him in any way for over 4 years. Well, I went back to her place, hung out in my room, and woke up to my brother crying and whining and screaming about how she could do this to him. He did nothing wrong. To make it short, she revoked his punishment because she doesn't believe that a punishment will fix him constantly bullying me, which is BS since she loves to punish me for the very smallest things ever. During the fight, my brother called me autistic and mentally ill and oversensitive. My mom also refused to do anything about that. For reference, my brother doesn't do this at my dad's house. He knows my dad would beat his ass for a week every time he bullied me. My dad doesn't do anything when my brother bullies me at my mom's house because he tells her house her rules. Well, ever since then, I've refused to live at my mom's house. I hate it so much. She's a major part of my life and I love her, but for the good of my mental health, I can't live at her place with my brother. He's a bully, and she might as well be since she supports him bullying me. Earlier today, we had a discussion about it, and she wasn't willing to budge on anything, and nor was I. Apparently, when she allegedly punished me, she won't admit she's ever done so. It's because I had done horrible, wicked stuff, and apparently, those punishments never worked. Yeah, they never did, because they were meant to limit my freedom, and I don't care about desert and my phone. I shouldn't have to cook and clean every meal while my brother sits on his lazy ass. In the end, she said that my brother will stop bullying me because he has common decency. The fuck he does. If he had common decency, then he wouldn't be bullying me in the first place. Anyway, it's just tough and depressing to live a life without my mom, even if it's for the better. I guess I'm just here for support. Typing this out makes me feel better. One last thing. My brother has multiple tics, such as constant eyebrow twitching, biting his shirt, etc. Never once have I brought this up, no matter how insulting he's been. Today, I asked my mom what she would do if I ever brought them up to insult Soren, and she said nothing because she doesn't believe in punishments, which is bullshit. If I ever brought up a single one, my world would come raining down in hellfire. Story 2. My dad was my first bully. I was inspired by another recent post to share this. I just need to get it off my chest. My first bully, my dad. My mom was also neglectful and abusive, but in a different way. My dad just liked to see you cower in fear. As a young child, he thought it was funny to throw a large blanket on top of me if I was laying on the floor, and as I tried to get out from under the blanket, he would take his arms and make a big circle around my body and trap me inside the blanket while I yelled and screamed to be let out. He let his dad, my grandfather, dangle me from the second-floor balcony of the local mall, threatening to drop me below. They would laugh as I cried. My dad and grandfather liked to grab my hands and squeeze them around the knuckles until I screamed because it hurt. They laughed. When I was 4, my dad started to terrorize me at bedtime. He knew I was terrified of a certain large stuffed animal, and I had demanded it be thrown away. Another story in itself. As he would tuck me into bed, he would ask, "Shh. Can you hear that? Sounds like the stuffed animal coming back to get you." I would cry and lay awake most of the night, convinced I would be dead by morning because this scary stuffed animal that I had thrown away was coming back for me. The blood pounded in my ears, and I thought it was its footsteps. This went on for years. As an adult living alone, I was mailed a big package for my birthday. Inside was that terribly scary stuffed animal from my childhood. They never actually threw it away. They saved me for years so that he could terrorize me again. My dad would point to the short bus and tell me where my ride was, insinuating that I was dumb and needed special education services. There's nothing wrong with needing education services. They would mock me for my sensory sensitivities from a young age. I didn't like tight clothing, shoes, etc., but would be forced to wear things that didn't feel good to me. Then mocked repeatedly. In a whiny voice, they would mimic my saying, "too tight." All of these examples happened before I even turned 5 years old. I can't imagine doing any of these things to scare or invalidate my children. Why did he do this to me? Even as an adult, he tries to control me through fear. He doesn't get very far anymore, however. I'm a little numb. Thanks for reading this far. Story 3. Sibling abuse and parents didn't do anything sibling abuse. Suicidal ideation. Hey everyone, I'm really new to this community and only just now wondering if this is something I went through. My parents weren't necessarily withholding emotion, though my dad was never really active with me. He worked full-time and my mom stayed home and took care of us. My dad only ever really patented when my mom called in reinforcement from someone a little more scary. My mom wasn't necessarily neglectful in a way a lot of you may have experienced, though. She wasn't ever cruel to me. But I was the middle child and bullied mercilessly. I'm only just now coming to terms with what happened to me. It wasn't just sibling rivalry, it was cruel sibling abuse. And the thing is, my mom never really stopped them. They'd gang up on me. I will admit, I wasn't a perfect angel, but most of the instances I can think of in which I did bad things to my siblings were retaliatory. I was a kid being emotionally and often physically hurt by two people I could not escape, one of whom I had to share a room with. And I guess where the neglect comes in is, like I said, my mom never did anything. She'd tell them to stop, I guess, but there were never any consequences. Through my entire childhood, I cannot recall a single time any of us were grounded. No taking away of privileges. Is that normal? In a way, my mom was too permissive. She never did anything, except occasionally when she'd call in Dad. He'd yell at us, but that's about it. I still remember all the times my brother and sister would hurt me, tease me mercilessly, give me body image issues I'm still messed up over. Through it all, my mom would tell me they do it because it gets a reaction from me. They think it's funny when I cry, when I burst out in anger, and if I just didn't let them get to me, they'd stop. And it hurts every time I remember how she'd tell me that. I still don't like it when people see me cry. I can barely even let my fiancé see me cry. Just like when I was a teenager going through depression and suicidal ideation, which I never told my parents about because my mom told me you go to hell if you kill yourself. I still have to go and lock myself in my room and sob, while my poor fiancé probably struggles with seeing me this way. I still have a hard time both identifying and expressing my emotions. If something happens to me in my emotional life, I often need several days to even just figure out what exactly I'm feeling and why. I can barely even talk about negative emotions with my fiancé, about issues I've been feeling and dealing with about us. Anyway, I guess part of me just felt the need to vomit this all in the event that anyone reads this. I feel a lot of guilt over feeling like I was abused or neglected because I know compared to so many people, this wasn't that bad. I never had anyone other than my siblings abuse me and never had to go without a single thing as a privileged white girl in a now nearly extinct middle class, but the hurt I feel is still real. I only just realized about a year and a half ago that my siblings were abusive, and only the past few weeks have started to wonder if my parents were emotionally neglectful. Even now, I'm not really close to my family and feel intense guilt about it. My sister lives at home, and brother calls our parents most days and sees my mom when she babysits twice a week. Meanwhile, I text them maybe once a week. I haven't called since my dad's birthday, I think, in late January. I was the last person to find out my brother was proposing to his now wife. He got my sister's advice on the ring. I haven't talked to any of them about it. I probably never will. None of them would care. They'd say I was never abused or neglected. It wasn't that bad. So I guess maybe that's why I feel guilty feeling this way. My siblings would probably even mock me if they knew I felt this way. Neither of them have ever apologized to me for how they routinely ganged up on me. I guess I just want to hear whether anyone went through severe sibling bullying and had parents that never did anything about it. I'd love to hear how you have worked through or are working through it. Story 4. What is up with parents ignoring sibling bullying? I saw a story similar to mine on the front page today, except it was a South Asian boy being bullied by his older sister and his parents looking the other way, while I am a white American girl who was bullied by my older brother while my parents looked away. Growing up, I had a brother 3 years older than me. He was a complete bully. He would hit me all the time, usually when my parents weren't around, but he sometimes would sort of lightly hit me even when they were around, and after a while, my mom would just ignore it or punish us both. Even when my extremely nervous, rule-abiding, desperate to please child self was sobbing and he was grinning. He would humiliate me any chance he could, pick on my worst insecurities. He read my diary out loud to his friends. A very sad journal, written in the 5th grade, when I was at a new school and had no friends and his bullying was at its peak, about feeling so isolated in the world. One thing my mom finally got mad at him for. He didn't get grounded or anything. She just kind of yelled at him. She was not light-handed with punishments either. She wasn't really physically abusive. She did spank us, but honestly, the pain was next to nothing. But she grounded us constantly, quite evenly too. She took my brother's driver's license away for a year for smoking pot. She wouldn't let me have friends over for a month when I walked too far down the street once. He still emailed my crush passages that I wrote and laughed the entire time. I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. My brother would say the cruelest things to me, and when I retaliated in any way, I would get in more trouble than he. She told me to just ignore it because it was just easier. For the longest time, I thought she straight up hated me. I talk about my mom mostly because while my dad was similar, he was always working and not really around often. Then I thought maybe it was a gender thing, like people only punish their daughters or something. But I've read so many accounts of sibling bullying, and I see the same story over and over. It's usually the older sibling, but not always. One sibling picks on a more sensitive one, and the parents just get tired of intervening, and so they just don't. Gender irrelevant, culture irrelevant. I'm a white American, but I've read stories from other groups who often think it has something to do with their cultural background, but it seems ubiquitous among us all. A lot of parents are good and proactive about this, but it's shocking how frequent it seems parents parents passed this off as sibling rivalry. I have almost killed myself several times for my brother's abuse. I was bullied in school like most kids, but it didn't even affect me, didn't even register in comparison to the torture my brother put me through. My parents' enabling sent me the message that nobody would ever be there for me, that I was a waste of space. I was brought up Christian, atheist by the age of 14, and I remember sobbing to my brother, begging him to help me understand why I deserved such hatred. What about me was so evil? I genuinely believed I had to be part devil or something, because I tried so hard for someone to feel I was worthy of love, but apparently I just fundamentally was blind to how awful I was. The look of satisfaction dripping from his smirk is something I will never forget. Strangely, my parents were otherwise good parents. My mom read to me every day, attentively listened to me talk about every detail of my day, and told me I was good and honest with my friends, and always should be when I told her about middle school drama, made crafts with me, signed me up for a million extracurriculars, taking into consideration my interests, took an active part in my education, made a family sit-down meal every night, yet let me be a kid and fostered a social life outside of my family. I had many friends and did well in school as a result, but she just turned a completely blind eye to my brother's behavior. He would steal my food and mock me relentlessly when all I wanted was for him to like me. He would literally push me off the computer when I was trying to do my homework so he could play games. Everyone passed it off as normal childhood things. He literally said he wished I was dead all of the time. He's also very intelligent, especially socially. I'm much more naive, awkward than he is. So he was great at manipulating the kids at school and our extended family to turn against me. I developed an extreme sleep disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder because of him. I think I have quite a thick skin, and I literally think of suicide anytime I'm near him. He's the same. His tactics are just more subtle these days. I just can't believe how common this experience is. I know most families aren't quite like this, but a significant minority of them are. I can't believe my parents reacted this way. They are otherwise such reasonable, loving people. How do people just act like this is okay? I've read so many stories of older sisters and brothers, and a few younger sisters and brothers. My boyfriend's family was the same, except it was his younger brother bullying him. His younger brother's just a year younger than him and actually has always been bigger, and he's just got a sadistic personality, whereas my boyfriend is quite empathetic and sensitive. I just don't understand what is wrong with humanity that people who otherwise aren't negligent or abusive enable this shit, dismissing it as sibling rivalry. Thank you for joining us on Roundup Reddit. We hope these stories have resonated with you and perhaps provided some solace if you've faced similar challenges. If you have a story to share, please leave it in the comments. Until next time, stay strong and take care.